meeting. And to my left is my colleague, Councilor Frankie Dakota. To my right is Councilor Rodney Elliott. I'd also like to recognize Mayor James Milanazzo, who's in attendance, Councilor Rita Mercier, Councilor Joe Mendonça, Police Chief Ken LaValle, Solicitor David Fenton, Henry Marchand, Assistant to the City Manager, and also Bill Potter, who is an Animal Control Officer, and Robert Pickard, Animal Control Officer, and members of the MSPCA and people who do a great job with animals. With that said, Mr. Clerk, please have the roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Here.
Councilor Dakota.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
3 present.
The first thing I think the committee should address is we received a communication from Solicitor David Fenton, and it reads, Dear Manager Lynch, Mayor Milanazzo, members of City Council, since fines imposed under other sections of the City Code, Chapter 104, are paid to the city clerk in order for the proposed responsible pit bull ownership ordinance to be consistent as to where to pay fines that are imposed, I recommend a motion to amend the ordinance sent to the council packet for tonight's meeting. The motion to amend would read as follows. On page 7, subsection K, 3, lines 6, 7, and 8, strike out the words to the animal control officer and substitute, therefore, the words to the city clerk. And Mr. Solicitor, I imagine this is the fines or that are to be paid to the city clerk where all fines are paid?
That's right, Mr. Chairman. That section refers to when there is an impoundment of the dogs, there is an insurance provision which says that that the dogs are not to be released unless the fines are paid, and as I say, it reads presently to the animal control officer, and it should read to the city clerk.
Okay. I think it's a legal issue, and any discussion on that amendment? I'll entertain a motion to amend that section as written.
Motion to adopt amendment.
Motion to amend the subsection K3, lines 6, 7, and 8, strike out the words to the animal control officer, substitute therefore the words to the city clerk, seconded by Councilor Dakota. Roll call.
Councilor Caulfield.
Yes.
Councilor Dakota.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
3 yeas.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. Councilor Elliott?
Thank you. I just had a kind of a follow-up question, Mr. Solicitor, relative to fines and the collection of fines. Now, this pertains to dogs that are essentially confiscated or are taken into custody, I should say, not confiscated. What about fines for other violations in this ordinance? How do we collect those? I know they go to the clerk. I know we've had this discussion in the past that the animal control officer can issue a citation or not a ticket, or a ticket. But how do we actually, if the dog owner doesn't want to pay it, is there a way for us to go after that?
Well, to answer your question directly, if the person owns a real estate, of course, we can impose a lien upon the real estate. In addition to that, of course, there is a way to well, let me put it this way, that the non-payment of the fine is in itself another and continuing violation. And in turn, the dog could be impounded and, held until the fines were paid. So that's another way of enforcing it. And then, of course, you could bring an action in the district court to collect the fines as well.
So, for instance, I'm going to presume, Mr. Clerk, are there any outstanding citations that have been issued by the dog officers that haven't been paid yet, that you know of, or could you find that out for us? Because
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the figure off the top of my head, but certainly
there are. Okay.
without question.
So I guess that's my concern, Mr. Solicitor. How do we send a message that once you're fined, we are going to come after you and we are going to try to collect it? Because the perpetrators, I don't want to presume, but if they're not abiding by the dog ordinances in the city, chances are they're not going to comply with paying these fines.
I agree. The worst violators that probably owe the most fines, it'd be just a matter, as I say, of one of the three ways I just indicated,
Okay.
that we, initiate an attack on payment of fines.
Okay. So and so we'd have to pursue it in district court, which is clearly a time-consuming and a laborious process to go through, right? I mean, that's going to take your time or the clerk's time, which, if we have to do it, we have to do it. But it's one of these circumstances that if they don't have any real estate, we can't attach any liens, but we can pursue them in district court. Okay, thank you.
Mayor Milonazo?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, through you, if I could ask Attorney Fenton to maybe walk the subcommittee through the recommended changes that we, as a committee, we met the Wednesday after our last meeting, the Animal Control, the Animal Advisory Committee, and came up with some suggested language to the ordinance. So if we could maybe have Attorney Fenton, and I appreciate the representatives from the Animal Advisory Committee being here again this evening.
That's what we're going to do, Mr.
Great,
Mayor.
thank you.
We're going to do that. And this new ordinance, the amended ordinance, I have some questions about some of the amendments that are in there and the new paragraphs. So Solicitor Fenton and anyone else, the dog officers, they also want to speak on this issue as well. But Solicitor Fenton, if you want to walk us through the amendments that have been made.
Certainly. If you recall, the last Public Safety Committee, I believe, was on the 10th of May. And on the following evening, on the 11th, as was made aware at the council meeting, the Animal Advisory Committee met, and they had some changes that they suggested, and they were then asked by the mayor, who was also present at the meeting, that with those changes, would they be supportive of the ordinance? And I believe their answer was that they're probably never going to be fully supportive, but on the other hand, with those changes, they would not object to the ordinance being passed in that form. So with that in mind, I'll just go through the changes that were made. And the first...
Just what page?
Yes,
David?
I'll give you the page in just a moment. On page 5, paragraph F, in the middle of the page, the last sentence was added that if owners of property other than a single residence, that the muzzle, leash, or security temporary enclosure requirements would be applicable when the pit bull is away from its particular living unit, including any common areas on the property. The next change was on page 6. At the top of the page, there's a figure 5 in parentheses.
Yes.
And at the end of that, it basically relates to what the owners should do and when they should make a notification to the animal control officer. So 5 was changed so that it reads, within 7 days if a pit bull has a litter of puppies. And what was added was, and the number and sex of the puppies. In other words, it originally ended with the first word puppies, and
that's
the number
in
and the
this
sex of the
present
puppies.
ordinance. I believe I read
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay. The next change was on the top of page 7, the Lowell Humane Society had concerns that if they had pit bulls under their jurisdiction, and in turn they needed to walk those dogs, they wanted to be able to walk them on a leash, but not necessarily muzzled. And so that's what paragraph B said. Then paragraph A said that if a pit bull that had been under their jurisdiction had gone through a safe dog training and was to be then turned back into society, that that dog would be exempt from the muzzle provisions of the ordinance. The next change, again on page 7, there's a paragraph 3 in parentheses that says redemption, and the last sentence was added that abandonment of the pit bull during impoundment would not constitute a waiver of the payment of any unpaid fines by the owner. Those were the changes that grew out of the meeting that evening. Other than that, I think that the changes that were made you had before you on the previous submission.
Okay. Thank you very much, Solicitor Fenton, and I agree with all these changes with the exception of one. And I'll give you the reason why. A dog which is placed with a person by the Lowell Humane Society and which has received a safe dog training shall be exempt from the muzzle provisions of 104-29-1. And what I'm trying to understand is how can you have one pit bull with a muzzle and another one without a muzzle? And who is going to verify and sign off that this particular dog has been trained and is now safe amongst the citizens of our city? And the two animal control officers here, they want to speak on this whole ordinance. And I just want to stress, we're not trying to push this ordinance through tonight. We'll wait until everyone's happy with it and do it at a proper time. We don't have to do it tonight. I think this is such a big issue that we have to take our time and make sure that we do it properly. So would Bill Potter or Robert Pickard from the Animal Control Office just address the subcommittee and give us your feelings?
Absolutely. First thing I want to say is I agree with a lot of the changes, and they work out good, but I do also agree with you, Bud, saying with the involving the Humane Society and safe dog training, I don't think we would just say they can say that the dog is safe. You can't, if someone else had a trainer and they wanted to say that, or someone else, only dogs that were released were there, it's going to make a difficulty. The other thing, a couple things I wanted to say is, I wanted to ask that we had more time for this. That was my first thing. Now, one of the reasons was when the Animal Advisory met the last time, I was actually on Westford Street when they had the shooting, and we removed 18 animals from there. So I couldn't go to that meeting. I was on that call. Another thing that's a concern with my department is the budget that's going to be addressed and the kennel costs and the kennel contracts. Presently, which is a common contract, is for 15 animals with Wignall's Animal Hospital. And just that one night, we removed 9 dogs from there. So we're afraid we're going to run into a situation. My superiors are, we met today, that we're going to have to get something set up for additional housing or, so on and so forth. So they have a lot of concerns and they want to be involved to try to tweak this a little bit. That's basically my message. That's what I had to say.
Thank you. Mr. Picard, would you want to offer any views? And then we'll have discussions amongst the people in attendance.
Absolutely. I had a chance to read over the contract, the brief ordinance. My concerns are, what's good for one is good for all. No disrespect to the MSPCA or the Lowell Humane Society. What's from stopping me to I'll take a pit bull and I'll walk them over by the Humane Society, and I can say, I'm walking them for the Humane Society, and I don't have to put a muzzle on them. You know what I mean? I mean, what's good for one is good for all. That's it. Thank you.
I personally, this is my own personal feelings, I wouldn't have a problem with a member of the Humane Society walking a pit bull without a muzzle, because I know that dog is under strict supervision, and it's a fine line, but I do have a problem with releasing a dog that has special training to someone. Who is to know if this dog has special training, and why should that dog be allowed without a muzzle and there's other dogs? It's discrimination. And we would have an immense amount of problems over that particular issue. So if anyone from the MSPSA want to speak or offer your views?
Sure. So I think the intention of that, just to give a little bit of light on it, is that it falls under the section J under exceptions. When you look at exception number 3 that's listed on the page prior, the page prior puts in a provision that says, no dog that is trained and relied upon as a service dog or assistance dog by a person with a disability shall be subject to this, nor shall a dog which has successfully completed a dog or canine training program from a facility or instructor possessing a nationally accredited certification in dog training, unless otherwise deemed a dangerous dog under this chapter. So the conversation that we had was not necessarily limited to Lowell Humane Society. I think there was some talk about MSPCA as well, and it could be brought into any organization that every 6 months we have an opportunity to review this, could have the opportunity to be discussed as an exception for that, or the Animal Advisory Committee could make a decision on behalf, or make a recommendation on behalf of an organization. But the point being is that Lowell Humane Society, MSPCA, recognized humane organizations already have a process in which we select out dogs that we believe are dangerous to the community by doing it's not actually safe dog training. I'm not sure that's really a good word for it. It's more a behavior evaluation, or temperament evaluation might be another way to put it, to make it a little stronger statement. So I think the point being is that the animal has been safely deemed through a recognized temperament evaluation, and then also on top of that, as we've demonstrated, the MSPCA and Lowell Humane Society also have a selection process in which we are able to predetermine responsible pet owners as opposed to irresponsible pet owners. So when you connect those two, a temperament evaluation determining that, to the best of our ability, that the animal is safe, along with somebody that is a responsible dog owner, should be enough to say that there's an exemption that should be there, because it's essentially very similar to section number 3 under J. So I think that's where the logic came from.
Okay, let me just ask you this question. If the subcommittee went along with this, and the council did as well, who would be responsible? Who would sign off on this dog who's been released to a citizen in the city, that this dog is safe amongst the citizenry of the city? And who is going to answer the questions when people come down? How come my dog has to be muzzled and that one doesn't?
Well, I think that the answer to that would be that they have an option to have their animal not be muzzled under section J, number 3. So if a citizen was upset that their dog was not exempt, then they would have an opportunity to become exempt by going through a nationally accredited dog training program to make sure that their animal could be taken out.
You know as well as I know, people, some people in this city aren't going to do that. The animal control officers just testified to us. They took 9 pit bulls out of an apartment on Webster Street. 9.
Right. But I don't understand the connection with that, so.
Well, what I'm saying is not everyone's going to bring their particular dog to this training program.
Well, right, and then they wouldn't have an exemption. So it's not for the public to come through a training program through Lowell Humane Society. It's for the animals, it's for the pit bulls that are placed out by the Lowell Humane Society, for those animals to, A, have been deemed safe dogs, and B, placed with responsible owners. There's no connection to the public going through a training that way.
Who's representing the Lowell Humane Society tonight? Could I ask you a question?
Crystal Arnott from
Who
Lowell
would
Humane
sign
Center.
off on a certificate? Who would be liable for this dog to be safe?
Well, I think ultimately the owner is always liable. However, every dog that we place goes through a rigorous evaluation, as well as every person who wants to adopt goes through a rigorous evaluation. I can't tell you how many people I've denied this week alone for adoptions for all kinds of animals, not just pit bulls. So the fact that we're putting the animal through a test, and we do not place any animal unless we are fully safe with that animal. We feel as though it's a safe animal. And so between that and the evaluation process of the adopter, that makes it a safe adoption. I can tell you, if you look at the records of any of the dogs that were bite records last year or picked up off the street, none of them were adopted from the Lowell Humane Society or probably any other MSPCA or organization, if you want to go through it and take a peek. I'm sure that none of them were, because they were adopted out to good homes who aren't going to break the laws. They're registering their dogs, they're getting them vaccinated, they're following the rules. So these are responsible owners, and they should be provided the opportunity to not have to muzzle a dog who's a safe dog. And like Mike said, other owners who didn't adopt from a shelter have that opportunity. If you look back in that prior subsection, they have the opportunity to go out and have their dogs evaluated and not have to wear a muzzle either. So they're provided an opportunity to walk muzzle-free, just as anyone that adopts from an organization.
Would these dogs that you would release to people, would they be neutered or spaded?
Always. We don't release any cat, dog, or rabbit from our shelter. Pit bull, Labrador Retriever, Pomeranian, everything is fixed before they leave.
The only problem I'm having with this is we're going to get discrimination cases in the city.
I think you're already facing that, considering you're putting it out to one specific breed. So, I mean, we've already passed that line, if you want to talk about discrimination. We're already discriminating towards one specific breed. So
Make it even worse by saying some have to be muzzled and some don't.
I disagree. I think it's going to make it safer for everyone involved.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to now let my colleagues weigh in on this, or anyone who would like to speak on the issue. Councilor Mendoza?
Yes. I haven't had much of a chance to weigh in on this issue yet. I'm from the outset against muzzling any specific breed, but I understand that the committee has done a tremendous job in trying to address the issue. There are many things in here that are improvements, and I agree with. So I can accept this if they can get the dog trained and have it certified, and then they have a way in which they don't have to be muzzled, and we have some assurance that the dog has been trained. The question I have is, there's a registration fee listed in here for pit bulls, but I don't see a difference between neutered and non-neutered for that classification. Or does the pit bull that's neutered fall under the standard part of the ordinance, which would be currently, I think, $10 to register? In any case, I think that we need to address the offenders in a sterner method. Because right now, as I see it, the problem dogs are the ones that are not obeying these laws to begin with. They are getting away from enclosed yards where they necessarily wouldn't be muzzled. They're getting out and then biting people. So I'm left to wonder how this addresses the problem. The way I see addressing the problem is to increase the penalties and to increase the registration for all non-neutered dogs, so that we can encourage neutering. And I believe that would reduce the aggressiveness of any breed. So those are just my comments about the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Potter, Mr. Picard, I'm sorry.
I was standing here listening to her about, being trained. The thing of it all is any animal, or cat, dog, whatever, whether it's trained or not trained, put under the right circumstances, it's going to bite you. My dog, 100-pound golden retriever, nice dog, it's never bit anyone. But I'll tell you what, you grab his tail and pull it, he's probably going to bite you. So whether they're trained or not trained, I just feel that any dog that's put under stress and put in the right position, and nobody sees it more than me, if he's going to snap, he's going to bite you. That's just my opinion. But as far as training, who's going to train him? Who's going to sign their name to that? That's what I want to know. Who's going to sign their name to saying the dog will not bite anyone? I guarantee it. I want to see whose name's going on that paper. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else, Council Rita Mercier? Anyone else who'd like to? Councilman Dunst.
Just my question about the registration fees. Is there a differentiation between neutered and non-neutered? If somebody could clarify that for me.
What's that?
I can answer that if you need. The actual provision in this, which is probably the best part of this, is that it is a requirement that all pit bulls be spayed or neutered through this. So there isn't a difference in the registration fee because of that provision. However, with that being said, there was actually something we discussed at the Animal Advisory Committee that I don't think was reflected on this, the amendments, which relates to that question, which is on page 3, section D. There is an inconsistency in here that I couldn't quite explain, which in the last 4 lines does say, for the registration and license, it says, in no event, however, may more than 2 pit bulls be registered, licensed, stored, housed, sheltered, or in any way located at a single household, except that puppy pit bulls less than 9 weeks old shall not be included for the sole purpose of this 2-animal restriction. It's a little bit inconsistent for me in the sense that, and David, you might be able to answer this for me, is there really shouldn't be pit bull puppies being born if there is a strict spay-neuter part of it. So I don't quite grasp how there would be an exception for people having puppies that are 9 weeks of age. If our goal is to get them all spayed and neutered, which I would support, is that there should be some tougher language saying if you have a litter of puppies, there should be an appropriate action in which the city has some control over that, because you're essentially in violation if you have a litter. So just some inconsistency on that. It might need to be cleaned up. So.
I understand both of the amendments are both Section A. I understand the purpose behind it. We're trying to reward dog owners or potential dog owners that have either gone through a program to make sure the dog is safe or not. My concern is we're either going to put an ordinance in place and let the public know that the ordinance is for their public safety, which is what this ultimately is all about. How is the person on the street going to know whether this pit bull has been trained or not trained? How is the dog officer going to know whether it's trained or not trained? I don't want to lose the ordinance, but I think if we adopt this, it sends a false sense of hope on the level of protection that we're providing to the public. First and foremost, and secondly, let's face it, considering the number of challenges or problems, I'll say problems we have with, again, it's not the responsible dog owners. We all know that. That's not what this ordinance is trying to target. It's those individuals that are breeding them illegally or getting them illegally. They're not treating them properly. They're certainly not training them, that we're trying to identify and to let the public know that they're out there. We have a problem in the city. It's the largest breed that we have. And in order to protect you, this is what we're putting into place. I have concerns that these irresponsible dog owners will know this. They certainly will know that there is a provision, there is a loophole, there is a way to try to get around it. They've gotten around everything else, including paying the fines, treating the dog properly. So while I do understand the purpose and the intent behind it, when you look at how it is going to work and what people at home or people on the street are going to think or presume, how are they going to know? And I don't know how we solve that. I don't know how we solve that problem, and I think it's a problem. So short of that, I think that we need to just have the ordinance as it is without these two amendments, and let's see how it works. I thought that was the intent. I guess I wanted to ask, I know that you, Mr. Mayor, what your thoughts are on that, knowing how are we going to differentiate between a good pit bull and a bad pit bull?
Again, you do bring up a good point, Councilor Elliott, but we felt in our discussion of 2 weeks ago that these amendments would not penalize the responsible dog owner, the responsible pit bull owner. We are trying to get to the bad owner to deal with it, and I think that if we have a muzzle law and we allow these exemptions, that people can go to the Lowell Humane Society or the MSPCA, go through a temperament evaluation, get their dogs trained, and if there's some way we could, working with the animal control officers, make sure that maybe their tag's a different color. I don't know. Maybe there's some way to differentiate between those that have gone through it with a different color tag. But I think those things that can all be worked out through the implementation, if this ordinance ends up getting voted and passed through the implementation. Our goal, I think, is to not penalize the responsible dog owners, because as we know, I know some, as the chairman indicated 2 weeks ago, some of these came from out of state, but in the last week, we got probably a dozen emails from Lowell residents that are responsible pit bull owners, and they're asking us to look at the ordinance from the standpoint of enforcement and temperament evaluation to make sure that a good responsible dog owner isn't penalized through this ordinance. So I think that's what we're all now trying to get to.
Thank you.
Mr. Favreau, you want to speak?
Yeah, if I could briefly, my name is Kenneth Favreau, and I live in 4 O'Neill Street in Lowell, Mass., and I'm heavily involved in this ordinance. And I've brought up a couple of things in the past. What I'm bringing up now is the exception that came up today. I think we have a liability problem. If the Humane Society says this is a good, safe dog, everything's fine. 3 months later, this dog mauls somebody, and we got a $2 million lawsuit against the city, and the city loses. Who pays that $1 million fine or $2 million fine? We're not here to punish or to reward the good dog owner. We're here to protect the citizenry. That's what this whole committee is about. And, I mean, you recently passed an ordinance for a safe dog ordinance, for a dangerous dog ordinance. It isn't enforced. I mean, you people have sat here yourselves and said, well, yeah, we passed an ordinance, but we don't enforce it. Why? Because it costs money. Hello? It costs money? We're here to protect the citizens. That's what you're supposed to do. We're not here to punish some guy or gal who owns a dog and does the responsible thing. But I have a problem with the Humane Society or the SPCA or anyone else saying, this is a good, safe dog, and then the dog mauls somebody. Where's the issue there? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate that I wouldn't want their job, Mr. Porter, Mr. Picard's job. It's a very difficult job, and believe me, I wouldn't want to do it. And you do a great job in the city, Monday through Friday, I believe. And we've asked Manager Lynch to see if we can come up with some funding to come up with a part-time officer on the weekends, whatever, to cover the entire city. So it's not an easy job, believe me. And I appreciate the work you do. Councilor Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have questions to the animal control officers. We have a population of 106,000 people. We have 1,500 dogs that are registered in the city of Lowell through the clerk's office. That's not counting all the dogs that people didn't take the time to register, or we don't know about them because they didn't take the time to come down here. We're initiating laws that seem to reflect to the people that are doing a good job with the animals, and I think it should be reversed. I feel we have a vicious dog ordinance. That, coupled with the fact that we could revisit it and retool it and make it a lot better, despite the fact of muzzling animals that haven't done anything wrong yet, I have a problem with that. And the reason I'm addressing it to our animal control officers, I think that, I don't know what your hours are, but I think we need coverage, not at the same time where you probably replace each other, where you must have to have a day off. I think if we look at your schedule and try to work it in such a way that we could stagger something so that you're on. I want to ask you questions, but I don't want to put you on the spot, so I'll answer the questions the way that I think. I think we don't have enough coverage. It's probably because we don't have enough money. I think that if we enforced that which we already have with that vicious dog ordinance, I think it would be, we'd be better off so that we wouldn't have to go searching for another entity by means of muzzling dogs. The reason I say this is because there's not too much that frighten me. Snakes do, and pit bulls do. I'm not going to deny that. I'm petrified of pit bulls because there's a stigma about it. There's a message there about their teeth or whatever. But I have a neighbor 2 houses down that came by my house just the other day, and we talked about it, and those dogs are so wonderful. If you looked at them, they're big, they're scary, but they're just wonderful. I'm not kidding. I don't know that I could be one of the people that would want to muzzle those dogs. They're under control. You can put the muzzle law in effect, and you're still going to have dogs that are out in the street biting people, and they're pit bulls. And if it were maybe 15 years ago, that prevalent dog would have been a Rottweiler, because that was the dog of the decade at that time, perhaps. So the dog that's prevalent is, of course, probably the one that's going to be biting the most, because there's more of that. I don't know if, I know the intention is to be public safety. I understand that, but I think enforcement is crucial. I think you work to the max. I'm not saying you're not doing your job. I think you are. I don't think there's enough of you. I don't think there's enough hours in the day that structures it so that we have coverage quite a bit for the full day and evening. I think that's what we got to do. I know what you said. The manager was not here in the room when you came to the podium, and I believe this. The fiscal year 12 budget reflects a certain amount of money that takes in dogs, but only a certain amount of money does that. If we send you out full tilt to enforce this new muzzle law, and we bring in all these other, we're not going to have enough money to house all this. I don't know what to say. It's a vicious cycle. I think we're trying to get there, but I think we're moving beyond that by initiating a muzzle law, something that I'm telling you right now, I can't support that. I can't support it. I know there's vicious dogs. I think you should punish the dogs that have bitten, and that could be a Lhasa Apso, that could be a poodle, that could be any damn thing. A bite to me is a bite. I know that they have different teeth, but I don't know. I'm going to talk about this further when we get into it, because I have something else to add, but that's...
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak before Councilor Dakota speaks? Mrs. Page, do you want to speak? It'd be a shame if we didn't allow you to speak.
Thank you, Councilor Caulfield. My name is Anne Marie Page. I live at 26 Fremont Street. God bless you, Councilor Broderick. I have registered to speak at the council meeting. I think you have a record of what I've said. I wouldn't feel safe if I had to walk around. I don't feel safe. I went downtown to meet with some people a couple of weeks ago to discuss this matter and saw one pit bull coming out of the establishment that I was going into, which gave me an uncomfortable feeling. And I don't think I'm the only one that has an uncomfortable feeling about pit bulls. So I have registered to speak to the council. I am in favor of the muzzle. It's a basket muzzle. I don't think it's going to hurt the animal. I don't want to be cruel to any animal. But I can't take that chance of walking up to a dog and asking him, gee whiz, do you have a good doggy certificate or are you a bad dog? I don't want to take that chance. You get a pit bull, you love it, you want to take care of it, and you want it in the city of Lowell, then you'll put a basket muzzle on it when you take it out of your house. They do it in Boston and it works, they can do it here. I thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Councilor Dakota?
Thank you very much. So we've been speaking about this 3 or 4 times this year, I think, and we keep saying the same thing. We need to enforce the rules that we have. We understand that. I think that the changes to this ordinance are a good central point. I think that it's the fact that it will be reviewed every 6 months helps all of those who are in opposition on either side understand that there is a short-term, this is a short-term ordinance that can be reviewed. I think that that's important. I would not support an ordinance that did not provide a provision for good owners to demonstrate through training that they had taken responsibility of their dogs. I think that that's important. And to me, it's not about rewarding good owners. It's about not punishing good owners, but punishing bad owners. I'm sorry. So I would like to make a motion to make any changes that were presented tonight, as well as taking this to a public hearing.
Second.
A motion by Councilor Dakota to bring the ordinance as presented to the council for public hearing. Is that the motion? I want to speak on the motion. Everything I have read so far in this ordinance is fine, except Section A. And after we take a roll call on Councilor Dakota's motion, I will also present a motion to strike Section A, a dog which is placed with a person by the Lowell Humane Society and which has received safe dog training shall be exempt from the muzzle provisions of Section 104-29. It doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense. And furthermore, who is going to be responsible to sign on the dotted line that this dog has received safe training and the dog is free and clear? Who's going to be responsible for that? That's a big question. So, roll call on Councilor Dakota's motion. Mr. Clerk.
Councilor Caulfield?
No.
Councilor Dakota?
Yes.
Councilor Elliott?
Yes.
2 yeas, 1 nay, the motion passes.
Now, I'd like to present the motion that we strike Section A on page 7. Roll call.
Well, we already adopted the
Well-
ordinance, though.
I'd still like to bring that forward.
Councilor
I
Caulfield?
don't know if we can do that. Can we get a ruling from the solicitor? We adopted the ordinance that's presented before us. I guess it could be amended at the public hearing.
That's true. The whole ordinance, of course, would be available for review at the public hearing. I would not think that the motion that Councilor Caulfield made would be appropriate, since the other a vote which was taken where the ordinance would be presented as is for a public hearing, and I think that would control.
I understand, Solicitor. I just had to make that statement public. I just had to do it. And if this ordinance goes to the City Council for public hearing, this ordinance has been watered down severely. And I can see people coming to City Hall, and I don't blame them, complaining about my dog wearing a muzzle, and my neighbor's dog doesn't have to have a muzzle. So you're going to have huge discrepancies on this particular issue. But that said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.